Did it do it? Who knows? Oh, it's recording. It's a miracle. Imagine if we had had this kind of Machshirim and Matan Torah. I don't think we needed them. At Matan Torah.
We're all together.
I know, but we can play it back now. No, at Matan Torah, first of all, at Matan Torah, we were all present, number one. Number two, the Neshamot were such a great Madriga, so pure, that they were able to receive the great light of God directly, okay, and receive it for the sake of giving. And that was the whole issue, was that after they heard the first two commandments, they became afraid. What were they afraid of? That they would no longer be able to receive it for the sake of giving, and so they moved back. That's the whole idea. They moved back and they said to Moses, Moshe, you here for us, because they were afraid that they would not be able to stick to na'aseh v'nishma. Okay, so that was the inyan. So Moshe Rabbeinu, he was upset because he thought it would be better for them to hear that but Hashem upheld the Am. He was pleased that we had Yir'ah. So the whole issue of Moshe Rabbeinu, of Matan Torah, was how do we receive the light? And that's a very good introduction to what we're going to learn today. Okay, it's also very much connected with Malka's question last time, because Malka said, what do we do if a great light arrives? And we don't have the vessels to receive it for the sake of giving? Something like that. That was more or less your question. And that, again, is a question that we're going to be dealing with today. So if you don't mind, if I'm going to stand up, I'm so uncomfortable sitting down. I find these chairs really impossible.
And whoever wants the paper, it's here.
Okay.
Were they afraid of receiving for the sake of receiving? What are you afraid of? Is that
yes, you're right. Receiving for the sake of receiving.
And they just wanted to grab.
Yes. Now we're going to absolutely go into this question today. What do we do with the great light of God? Really, really, really important question, and a beautiful, beautiful question. So I just wanted to also correct maybe a wrong impression, okay, or maybe a right impression. I'm not sure. What is a question? All right. Often we're learning, and a question pops up. All right. And sometimes, people say, can I ask a question? And I say no. All right. Which seems to be very rude. And the answer is I'm not being rude at all. The issue is that the question is the vessel for the light, which is the answer. Okay. Now, if the question is related to the topic and actually takes us further and takes us deeper and takes us more into it, then it's a question that I'm interested in and because it helps me also give the shiur. But if it's a so-called question, which in my view is not a question at all, it's a basic comment that somebody's popped something into their heads from something they heard or something or the other. To me, that's not a question. It's a comment. It's phrased like a question, but it isn't a question because it's not dealing with the topic on hand. It doesn't take us further. And it's just going to take me off. So that's the type of question that I say no to. Okay. So also because I want to get the material done in a proper way, be respectful to the material, and I don't want to go all over the place. So that's my issue of questions. Okay. So if you've got a question which is you don't understand what I just said, you don't understand the material, you've got a question about what I've said, absolutely ask the question. Okay. That's a perfect question because that's a vessel that will take us further. Okay, so that's good. And Marka asked a very good question last time, and the answer is going to be here in what we're going to learn today. So we're going to begin from Mordechai's work that he did with regard to Biktan and Teresh. Okay, so this is a follow-up from the last shiur poem. I'm just telling the people on Zoom. It's the second part of the article of Purim, which Rabbi Baruch Shalom Ashlag wrote out from what he heard from the table of his Holy Father in 1948 at the Point Suda. וזה עניין בקטן ותרש, שרצו לשלוח יד ומלכו של עולם. And this is the issue of Biktan and Teresh, who wanted to stretch out their hand against Malko Shel Olam, he says, the king of the world. V'yivada davar leMordechai, And the matter became known to Mordechai. And he searched out the matter until he found it. And this searching out wasn't at one moment, wasn't one time. Because Mordechai didn't get this easily. Only after great work. God showed him this issue of the defect. And once this has been cleared to him clearly, in other words, they hanged them both. After the feeling of this defect, then they were hanged. They removed these actions and desires from the world. Now, if you just read this the way it sounds like Chinese. Okay? All right. So I've come across this feeling of, reading something which sounds like Chinese. Huh?
Yeah.
It sounds a bit, it's like, it doesn't, what does this mean at all? But with the explanation of Rabbi Gottlieb, Bezrat Hashem, we will be able to understand what it means. So we're going to go to where it says 1079 on the bottom of the page, okay? All right, and we're going to spend time really looking at this commentary of Rabbi Gottlieb, which really opens for us this whole story. וזה עניין בקטן ותרש, שרצו לשלוח יד במלכו של עולם. פירוש, explanation. כהמשך לעניין המשתה, as a continuation to the whole issue of the banquet, שאותו אדון נמשכו אחר שתייה, where the whole generation got, apart from Mordechai, got drawn after receiving the great light for themselves alone in a way that we found out was kind of a compulsion. They became in a sort of situation where they just had to receive more of it. They were compelled by their will to receive.
But that was Jews too he's talking about?
Absolutely, we're talking about Jews. Yes.
I know the whole nation was frolicking in these acts, but okay.
We're talking about Jews, okay? All right? And we're talking about actually people who are able to go into such a banquet, okay? So we're not talking about lowly people at all. We're talking about Yehudim, okay, who want to serve God, who went to the banquet and suddenly find themselves in a situation of tremendously great light, which was too much for them to be able to receive for the sake of giving, like the story of Matan Torah. But
at the banquet,
yes, the light of redemption, because the light of redemption is coming into the world at the time of Purim in order to rebuild the second temple.
Purim is at the banquet?
Yes, absolutely. That's the meaning of the banquet. Okay, the banquet. Okay, they describe the Gemara Tikkun as a banquet. Okay, they describe the end of the Tikkun as a banquet. All right, when the Achashverosh is just a cover for what was really happening. Okay, the meaning of this article is to understand the inner meaning of Purim. Okay, so you have to sort of move a little bit away from the pshat to understand the meaning. So there is a banquet. The king invites everybody to the banquet. All right, what's the banquet? This great light. It's hinted at there that they're using the vessels of the Beit HaMikdash, meaning there's the great light of redemption is coming into the world in order to rebuild the temple. It's the end of the Galut. So this is absolutely the light of the Gemara Tikkun is coming in there. Okay, so what happens? Mordechai says, be careful. If you go to this banquet, and you receive this great light, you are liable to receive it for yourself alone. Okay, not na'aseh v'nishma, but grab. Okay, all right. Now, what actually happens at the banquet? Okay, Can we just leave the chairs alone? Thank you. At the banquet, it's written ein ones, okay? In other words, the light is there. You can receive it, or kaderech Mordechai, or the way of Mordechai, or the way of Haman. It's up to you. What's the way of Mordechai? The way of Mordechai is eating needs to be greater than drinking. What does that mean? The aspect of giving needs to be greater than the aspect of receiving. What's the way of Haman? Haman says, oh, great light, yeah, bad. Okay, that's Haman, okay? All right. Now, the Jews who went to the banquet, yes, we're talking about Jews. The Jews who went to the banquet started off, okay, it wasn't compulsory, but once they started to drink, they began to feel the compulsion to receive more and more and more. Why? Because it was a very great light, and they did not have the ability to say no to it. Now, when we're talking about great light, we're not talking about, you know, a nice day on the beach, okay? We're talking about the great light of God as it appears within the consciousness of a human being. That's what we're talking about. Okay?
Can I just ask,
Yeah.
if the light is in the hands of a goy, Achashverosh, how can it still be as a great light? How can it still
I
be
can't,
contained?
let's just stay on this article. Right? There's lots and lots of perushim. We're just learning the perush of Rav Ashlag, okay? All right, let's just stay with this. Okay. So, 1079. So as continuation for this whole issue of the banquet, okay, meaning this great light which was present, when the whole generation was drawn after receiving the light, this great light for itself, they became compelled. They were compelled by the world to receive. And they wanted to receive this light in the vessels of receiving. Now comes the whole work of Big Tan and Teresh, which is the will to receive for oneself alone in the mind and the heart of a person. What's the will to receive of the mind of a person? The will to receive is, I want to have control over my destiny. I want to understand everything. I want to know. I want to understand. I want to have everything signed on the dotted line. I want to feel that God is present, that I can be able to serve him. I don't want to serve him out of faith. I want to serve him out of knowledge, that I can know that he's there, then I can serve him. That's the will to receive oneself alone in the mind. The will to receive oneself alone in the heart is more obvious. It's the one which I just want to do everything for myself alone. I just want to serve myself. I want to feel my own comfort more than I want to feel the comfort of everybody else. Okay. Right, where am I? I lost the place. Here we are. That this will to receive oneself alone wants to stretch out its hand to the creator of the world. It wants to grab. It wants to bring the manifestation of godliness to actually be able to feel the light of God within our own experience. Okay? So the term shlichat yad is the hint, stretching out the hand to bring this light in the vessels of receiving, which are called hands. Now, Rabbi Gottlieb tells us something very interesting. Okay? Even though for people who are outside the temple of the king, in other words, who are not able yet to serve God for the sake of giving, Torah Lishma, I include myself in one of those, to actually want to feel the king inside one's own consciousness is actually a great spiritual stage. Okay?
That's a relief.
Okay. I mean, why why do we want that? Because at least, okay. Because most people are busy thinking about their cars and their holidays and their clothes and the entertainment and stuff like that. And if I actually letting go of the material side of my life, and I want to actually put my focus on receiving the light of God, for us, that seems like a tremendously great idea. It doesn't seem wrong at all.
He's basically as the makom, like reaching out to Hashem.
I don't know. Lishloch yad b'malko shel olam.
I would think the means like something negative to hit, but you're implying that for those of us who aren't yet inside the mouth, the means like toward.
Okay.
Desire.
Okay, yeah, we're talking about desire, yes. Okay. All right. So they, okay. אבל גם אצל אנשים שנמצאים מחוץ להיכל המלך, זו עצמה מדרגה גדולה. Even though for people who are outside the temple of the king, this itself is a great spiritual level. דהיינו שאדם יסיק השתוקקות, לשלוח יד במלכו של עולם, that a person should actually attain the desire to reach out his hand towards the king of the world. היינו שהשם יתגלה אצלו בתוך הדעת, that God should manifest himself within one's consciousness. שהרי הוא בדעומק כבר אינם משתוקקים לעניין זה. Most of the people in the world aren't looking for that at all. אלה עניינים גשמיים, they're looking for material things. ולכן עבור אנשים שמחוץ להיכל המלך, נחשב זה מדרגה שצריך להגיע אליה. So for people who are outside the temple of the king, in other words, haven't yet reached the level of Torah for its own sake, this seems to be a desirable level. מכל מקום, אליבא דאמת, אחר שאדם זוכה להשיג השתוקקות זו, however, once, in truth, once a person has merited to attain such a desire for the light of God, גם עניין זה צריך לתקן על מנת להשפיע. Also, this desire, we also need to correct so that itself will go for the sake of giving. And that's what they understood at Har Sinai. Okay, that what we talked about at the beginning was exactly right. Okay. היינו שצריך אדם להגיב למצב שמכיר את צונו להרגיש את אור השם בתוך הדעת, גם הוא פירוט והפריות הצורה. That is, a person needs to arrive at the situation where he recognizes that his desire to feel the light of God within his own experience is actually a cause of separation from God. He wants to just have the pleasure of it, in his vessels of receiving. And the great sages who achieved these levels tell us that the great light of God is the tiniest amount of the great light of God in one's consciousness is all the delights of this world put together, and it supersedes all of them. Okay, one tiny bit of it. Okay, so you can imagine how hard it is to let go of such a great light. Not easy at all. וצריך להיות מסוגל לבטל האור הזה. A person needs to be able to let go even of this light. ולעבוד את השם באמונה בלבד. And to serve God with faith alone. ומכאן יש שני אפשרויות כנ"ל, או שדוחה בכלל את החוכמה, על מנת להשפיע את החסדים, או שמקבל על מנת להשפיע. And here you've got two possibilities open to you. One minute. Or that you give back, you simply say, no, this is great, thank you very much, God, but I prefer to stay with my faith and my giving, okay? Or you say, okay, but I can receive it only for the sake of giving. Right, okay, so let's just think about this a moment, what that actually means. it would actually mean that if this great light comes, why does it come? It comes as a consequence of all the hard work a person did in emunah, going in faith, not receiving the Torah for himself, not using the Torah for himself alone, only doing it for the sake of giving. Okay, he's doing only working for the sake of giving. And finally, he reaches this point where the light of God comes into his mind, into his experience, into his feelings, into what we call ourselves, okay? So he either takes it as, oh, wow, now I got here, okay, which separates him, okay, all right? Or better, he says, that shows me that I'm on the right path, okay? That's the proof that I'm on the right path. And he goes straight back to emunah, okay? Lechtech acharai bamidbar be'eretz lo zruah. Okay, so the children of Israel, okay, they saw the great hand of God took them out of Egypt. Yes, all the miracles that he did, and then the miracle of the Kriyat Yam Suf, and they saw their enemies, the Egyptians, dead on the shore. What does it say? V'yaminu b'Hashem u'Moshe avdo, and they believed in God and in Moses, his servant. In other words, they understood what they needed to do. They understood that they're not to sort of say, oh, great, we won them or whatever. Okay, what they did was they went straight back to faith. They took the way of faith was the right way. So it becomes a dut, it becomes a testimony that the way of faith is right. And what Ilana asked, what is lahashpiach at chasadim? What it means is it makes it show how beautiful the way of giving actually is. Because if you have two choices, all right, one is the great light that God wants to give us, the Or Chochmah, and the other one is the desire to give, which is Or Chasadim, okay, and you choose Or Chasadim, the way of faith. What does it show you? It shows you how much you value the opportunity to give to God. And that it's not something that you're doing out of the fact that you've got no other choice available, but something that you're doing out of a totally free choice. If we, for example, go back to our, well, okay, wait a minute, Ilana. I'm carrying on with the
like you're saying both the same.
Wait a minute, okay? If we go back to our situation now, okay, where the light of God is not shining, okay, and it's, unless, I'm sorry, I talk about myself, where the light of God is not shining, and I don't feel the presence of God every single second of the day, I don't feel it in my consciousness, this is a state of hastara, concealment of God's face, okay? All right? So the concealment of God's face means that if I want to connect with God, we want to connect with God in the situation when God's light is hidden. It's not obvious to us. And as a Medina, as a state, we can see God's light is hidden. We still have hostages in Gaza. The soldiers are being called up again. I just heard in the taxi, Lo Aleinu, there was a pigua in the central bus station in Haifa. I mean, this is a place, this is Hastarat Panim. This is where God's light is concealed.
But
Okay,
the hostages
1
smell
minute.
Hashem's light in the tunnel. That is
Right,
amazing.
a minute. I really can't manage with these people. I'm really sorry, but I can't. Okay, so so if we're in that situation, then the way of faith is the only option to us. Okay, if we want to stay connected with God, the way of faith is the only option to us. But when there's only one option, can you really say that's a choice? Huh? No, you can't say it's a free choice. It's the default choice. All right? And it could be that a person uses faith. Finally comes the great light of God, give up faith and use and receive the great light of God. But no, if we remember that if we were to do that, we would get separated, all right? Then we say, okay, the great light of God has come. I'm going to take it as evidence, proof, that the way of faith is the right way. And not only does it keep us in connection with God, but it also shows that if in all that long journey that we took in our spiritual life, we'd had the option to choose the light of Chokhmah, we would still have chosen faith. And therefore, it raises up the value of all the actions that we did in faith, or even when God's light was hidden from us. And that's the issue of Lashpircha Hasadim. Okay? It makes a totally different value on all the faith that we did in the past, because now we're choosing faith when there is two options. Okay? When there is the light of Chokhmah present, and there is the possibility to continue in faith, and we still choose faith, that shows how valuable, how precious the light of faith really is to us. Okay? Right, good.
Okay.
Yeah, now you can ask a question.
Okay, so originally I thought you were saying this sentence means either you can choose to receive just for the sake of receiving, or you can choose to receive for the sake of giving.
No,
But when you're
no, that's
what
all I
you're saying-
said. I said, or you can choose for the sake of receiving for the sake of giving, or you can choose to leave go of this great light and just choose faith instead. Those are the two ways to react to this light.
so it's not receiving for the sake
No.
of receiving.
No.
Okay.
Okay, great. וזה שכתוב, carrying on, paragraph below, וזה שכתוב יוודע דבר למרדכי. And it was written that it was known the matter to Mordechai, שנודע לו שקיימים בתוך הרמות הללו של רצון לקבל. Once he understood what was he had within himself, these levels of the will to receive, also for this great light, okay, שרוצים לעבוד את השם דווקא בתוך הדעת, that we want to serve God also in דעת, ויבוקש הדבר וימצא, the matter was asked for and it was found out. ועניין הביקוש לא היה בפעם אחד, wasn't easy to find it out, because it's so obvious to us, or seems so obvious to us, that if the light of God comes into our lives, into our consciousness, it seems so obvious to accept it. Nahon? And to not accept it and choose the way of faith is counterintuitive. Okay? כי גם הכרה ובירור שרצונות אלו מוגדרים קרה הוא תהליך. The recognition and clarification that these desires are actually going to separate us from God, even receiving this great light of God is going to separate us from God, is a process. כי מצד הטבע של האדם, for from the nature of a person, אין זה רע כלל. It doesn't feel like it's bad at all. On the contrary, it feels like the greatest good that could possibly be in reality. מה יכול להיות יותר טוב מזה? What could be better than such a level of life של השתוקקות וכיסופים לשם, when we are longing and searching for God? As it's written, ישמח לב מבקשי השם. The heart will be glad who are seeking for God. I'm sorry if I cut you off, then I didn't mean to. Okay, apologize. Okay. הגם לפי אדמו"ר זצ"ל, זהו רק מבקשי השם בדרך אמונה והשפעה. מכל מקום, מצד הטבע, מורגשת דבר גדול וחיובי גם בתוך הדעת. So even for those who are seeking God in the way of faith and giving, even in our nature, in our will to receive, okay, it's felt as something positive and good. כי לא בנקל השיג מרדכי את זה, because it wasn't easy for Mordechai to attain this. שהשתוקקות להמשכת אור השם בתוך הדעת, למעשה מפרידה אותו מהבורא. That the longing to receive this great light in our own experience was actually going to separate him from the Creator, was a difficult thing to achieve. But after great work, he discovered this within himself. And that it's going to separate him from the Creator. Once he discovered it, talu. He said, I don't want that. And so the talu, it's a big tan v'tesh ala 8, is like referring to himself. He says, I don't want those desires by me anymore. And he hung them. Okay, he said, let's get rid of them. Okay, he hung them. Okay, Rabbi Ashrak sees all of it within one person. All right. He removed these desires, these actions from the world. Okay. He said, no, this is going to cause me something negative. It's going to cause me to separate from God. Then it's not going to cause me to be together with God. So therefore, I don't want to use them. Very last sentence here. Now, he brings here another aspect. There's also receiving for the sake of giving, when if you're dealing with too much light, okay, even too much light, this can also cause a breaking of the vessels or a tree of knowledge again. And there is a rule, and the rule is we cannot receive all 10 sfirot for the sake of giving. It's too much, okay? It's too much, we can't do it. So the first 3 sfirot, which actually contain the biggest amount of light, we don't receive. This is the way of the Jew. This is the way of Yaakov. The way of Esau says, now Esau, don't make the mistake of thinking that Esau, Haman, Laban, all these Pharaoh, all these wicked, they were great. The Baal Sulam says they were great spiritual characters. They had tremendous capacities, okay? But what did they do wrong? They said, give me all the light. They wanted all of it, okay? Bigtan and Teresh are aspects of the light which are too great for us. So in any case, even if we were to receive for the sake of giving, we could not receive them, okay? So this was, so Mordechai says, no, this is not for me. Thank you very much. No. And he takes this light and he just uses it as evidence that the way of giving is the right way. Okay? So he says, okay, only my way is the gateway to the king. That's why he's sitting at the Shah HaMelech. Okay? Right, great.
What is the that Rosh they wrote there? Gimel Resh?
Gimel Rishonot. The first 3 sfirot are the ones which are too big for us. Okay. Right, very good. So now we're going to go back to the Megillah. Okay, top of the page. After these matters, that is after the troubles and the work that Mordechai did through the clarification that he did. The king wanted to give him a reward for all his hard work. Because he only is working for God, only for the sake of giving, for Torah for its own sake, and not for himself alone. And since there is a general rule that the lower one cannot receive anything unless he has a need for it, that from the fact that we cannot actually attain any light unless we have a desire for it, that's the way we're built. And a vessel is called a lack. And he says, no. Happy is the man who is content with his portion. I'm happy with what I've got. I don't want anything more. Thanks a lot. How can God give him anything? And if the king were to ask Mordechai what he could give him for his work, since Mordechai is a tzaddik, but he's only working for the sake of God, that all his work is only for the sake of giving, and he has no need to go up in spiritual stages, but he is happy with a little bit. Of necessity, Mordechai would say, I'm fine. I don't need anything. I'm great the way things are. Thanks a lot. But the king had a desire to give him this great light of order, small, which comes, which needs to be received, dafka, on the vessels of receiving. Okay? And Mordechai is only using the vessels of giving. What to do? Masa Melech. What did the king do? Gidelet Haman. Okay? He increased the value of Haman. Okay? He put up the desire to receive the light. He gidelet Haman. Small. He increased the value of the vessels of receiving. And this is the inner meaning of he put his chair above all the other ministers. And likewise, he gave him the governance. Let's just go look at 1081, see what Rabbi Gottlieb tells us about this. Okay, so now, after a person has come inside the temple of the king, he's able to serve the king in emerald faith. He now gives him, once he's left with the vessels of giving in his spiritual stage, now the king wants to show him and reveal to him the purpose of creation. Because ultimately the purpose of creation is not that we should give to God, okay? That only makes our vessels suitable so that we can receive from God all the light that he wants to give. That's called the tikkun b'riyah. Once a person has done the aspect of tikkun b'riyah, okay, now the next stage, that's kind of like the first level of the tzaddik. The first level of the tzaddik is the tzaddik who's corrected all his vessels only for the sake of giving. And if you were to ask him, what do I need? He says, I'm fine, I don't need anything. But what was the purpose of creation? The purpose of creation was that God wanted to give goodness to all created beings. And that's the shlav bet shalat tzaddik. Okay? That's the second level of the tzaddik. That the tzaddik now needs to reacquire, if you like, his will to receive, not for himself, but in order to help God fulfill his purpose of creation. Okay? All right? That's the second level. So he's now in Kita Bet. Okay? Okay, he's gone up from Kita Aleph, he's now in Kita Bet. All right? Now that the king wants to manifest by him the purpose of creation, now he grows within him the will to receive. And why is he saying here the light of all 10 sfirot? The answer is like this. We've just been told that to receive all 10 sfirot is too much. Okay?
Where he said that he wants to receive.
I mean, 1081, third line in, third line down. Okay? Okay? Haman, which is called Haman. Okay? Now, why does it
have that's all of them and not just the first three?
So we said you've got 10 sfirot, okay? All right. Now, what we said was, if you receive all 10 sfirot, you don't have a choice but to receive all of them for yourself alone, because it's too much for us, okay? But why then did God increase all the 10 sfirot? Because you can't just bring half a spiritual level, okay? You've got to bring the whole thing and then divide it into half. So God provides us with the whole thing, and our job is to divide it into half. That's the inner meaning, by the way, of the Shekel HaKodesh. Okay? All right, yes, the Machatzita Shekel. Okay, so the Shekel HaKodesh is actually, we're learning this on Shabbat. The Shekel HaKodesh is exactly the same idea, that this great light appears, okay? All right, and what's the job of everybody? Divide it into half, okay? Same idea of the Kriyat Yam Suf, all right, the dividing of the Red Sea. This great big light comes, okay? The children of Israel go into the Red Sea, okay? And they do what's right, go with emunah, go with faith. So the sea divides and they can go forward safely onto dry land. But the Egyptians, what's the desire of the Egyptians? To receive all the light. So they drown in the sea, okay? Because the light is too much. That's why they drown, okay? So all of this, you can see how it works out. So here we are.
Where it says that you increased all 10. Because it said the three.
Because he Gidelet Haman, okay? Masa Melech, okay? What did the king do? Gidelet Haman. He gave all this light, okay? All right. ומחמוכן נתן לו תשליטה. היינו שכל עבדי המלך, so all the Jews, עבדי המלך is the Jews, okay? All the servants of the king, היו קוראים משתחווים להמן, כי כן ציווה לו המלך. So the Jews thought that this was right. In this, if this is the king has raised up Haman, and everybody's bowing down to Haman because they think that it's right. שהוא קיבל השליטה. וכולם היו משלימים עמו. Everybody was quite happy with that. Shinan HaKriya, Kabbalat HaShlita, that they bow down to Haman means that they accept the governance, that to receive all this great light seems good. The way of Haman in this work found favor in their eyes. More than the way of Mordechai. They probably couldn't understand the way of Mordechai. What was the point? If God's given us this great light, then obviously it's to use it, isn't it? Okay, what was the point of like not using all this great light? What's the point of giving it back? What's the point of going in emunah? They couldn't understand what was going on. Okay. Everybody understands surely that it's easier to go to serve God, okay, when we can understand what we're doing, okay, in the way of the left-hand line, which is called knowledge, okay, but Am Yisrael didn't say nishma v'na'aseh. They said na'aseh v'nishma. Na'aseh means we have to do it from faith first, then we will understand. Okay, so here you can see that they're doing it the wrong way around. When they're believing Haman, they're like just receiving in the way of knowledge. Okay, now we can serve God. That's not the right way. They asked Mordechai, why are you transgressing the command of the king? Because they saw the command of the king as raising up Haman. And since they saw that Mordechai is holding on to his opinion to go in the way of faith, even though this great light is shining, they were like confused. And they didn't know who was right. And they went and asked Haman who was right. And they told to Haman to see if Mordechai's words will stand up. Because he told them he is a Jew. Because the way of the Jew is eating needs to be greater than drinking. Giving needs to be greater than receiving. And the most important thing is faith. So kol yesod hayadut. And this is the old foundation of Judaism. Therefore, when all of them saw the way of Mordechai, שטען שרק הוא הולך בדרך היהדות, who maintained that only he is going in the way of יהדות, ומי שהולך בדרך אחרת כבר נקרא עובד עבודה זרה, and whoever is going in another way is already called an idol worshipper, זה גרם להמן הפרעה גדולה. That caused Haman a great disturbance. שמרדכי לא הסכים לדעתו, that Mordechai did not agree to his opinion. וזה שכתוב, וכל זה איננו שווה לי, וכל עצה שאני רואה את מרדכי יהודי יושב בשער המלך. And all that I have is not worth anything to me, so long as I see Mordechai the Jew sitting at the gate of the king. פירוש שמרדכי טוען, because Mordechai maintains, כי רק דרכו היא שער המלך ולא של המן. That only his way is the gateway of the king and not that of Haman. Okay, so let's just have a little conclusion, a little think a bit about what we're talking about. Okay, all right. So what we're talking about here is we're talking about a situation where, like for example, the great light of God is coming into reality because of the need to rebuild the temple. Okay. All right, so this great light is coming into reality. People are beginning to feel it. People are beginning to how do you relate to it? Okay, and I think Rav Ashlag gave this talk in 1948, Purim 1948. Okay, so it was a month before the Declaration of Independence of the State of Israel. All right, after 2,000 years. We're going to have a state, and it was already known round about that time that it was liable to happen, okay? So he's teaching his Talmidim in the Beit Midrash, there's going to be a great light coming. How are we going to handle it, okay? Are we going to do kochi va'otzim yadi asat ha'chayil hazeh, my strength and my power did this great work, which would be receiving for oneself alone? Are we going to try to receive all the great light? Or are we just going to say, thank you, Hashem, and continue in the way of faith? Okay? So this was his great teaching that he brought into the world at that time. And I personally think this is so relevant for us today. So relevant for us today. I think we are getting closer to redemption. I mean, when we see the miracles, miracle after miracle that we've been privileged to witness in this last year, the hand of God. I know not everything's perfect. I know that some hostages are still in Azad, and I dedicate the learning to them with all my heart, that they should be redeemed speedily. And I know that we look like in a mess, but considering what a mess we could have been, if it hadn't been for these incredible miracles, we have to feel that there's a great light coming. How do we relate to it? How do we relate to this great light? The great light is there just as a testimony that the way of faith is the way to go. Okay, and that's why it's such an important article. All right, and it's amazing, amazing. It's all written in the Megillah. Huh?
That's the Hasidim, recognizing the Hasidim, what you're saying.
Yes, that's right. Yes, that's right. Yes, להשפיע את החסדים, to value the Hasidim. Okay, right. We've got another 10 minutes. Yeah, let's keep going. You guys got energy for another 10 minutes? Mm-hmm. Okay, great. All right. So from this we can understand, all right, what is written, and Mordechai Yada. Mordechai knew, like what did he know about the decree of for Haman for the destruction of the Jews? It seemed to imply that only Mordechai knew. But it's also written, and the city of Shoshan was Nevucha, was, wow, you know, confused. Does it mean that everybody knew? What it means is is that the city of Shushan were confused. They didn't know who was right. But Mordechai knew, שאם תהיה שליטת המן בזה שהוא מחזיק את הקו שמאל, תהיה חס ושלום כליאה לעם ישראל. What did Mordechai know? He knew that if we continue valuing the way of Haman, which is to receive the light, okay, all the light, even for the sake of giving, this will actually cause extermination, God forbid, to the people of Israel. It will blot out Israel from the world. The way of Yadut of Am Yisrael. כי בסיס עבודה של עם ישראל הוא בחינת אמונה למעלה מהדעת. Because the whole basis of the work of the people of Israel is the aspect of faith above knowledge, faith rather than experience. This is called giving, even when the light of Chochmah is present or when it's hidden. And to walk with closed eyes with God. And to say always about oneself, like they have eyes but they don't see. Like even when I see the great light of God, I just say, okay, that's not to do with me. The whole approach of Haman is to receive all the light and to receive it in his experience. Is the opposite of faith. And if he would have this governance, God forbid, he could destroy the way of Israel. Okay, 1 minute, I think okay. Right. Yeah, okay. וזה סוד שהמן הציל גורלות. Okay. Okay. This is in a meaning that Haman threw lots. In the way that is written about the lots on the Yom Kippur. One lot for God and one God a lot for Azazel, which as we know is the framework of evil. So the Goral for Hashem is the aspect of giving, which is the way of giving, which is called eating, and the way of faith. And the other lot for the left-hand line is the way of receiving. And it's not a successful way. And all the negative stuff, the other side, comes from there. I wanted to say, when we talk about these sins that we see in the Torah, like the sin of the golden calf and the eating of the Eitz Hadat and all these things, we get the impression that they were done by, stupid low people. Like who was the idiot, who wants to sacrifice a golden calf instead of Hashem when they stood. The thing is, we don't really understand what these sins really were. What Rav Ashlag teaches is very interesting. He teaches that these were very great spiritual masters. Okay, we think of them as idiotic, stupid or something, but they weren't. Okay, they were great masters. They also understood something very interesting. They understood to just receive for yourself alone. There's no light there. What we think is light, what we receive inside our kishkas, our wills to receive for ourselves alone, our pleasures in food, our pleasures in our pleasures, okay? That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about the real light of God, all right? They understood that to receive it for themselves alone, from the beginning, there's no light there anyhow. They did receive for the sake of giving. They did all that work to receive for the sake of giving. And then just at the end, snatched it. Okay? That's what the evil is. Okay, if there was no light, the evil's not attracted to it. The real Sitra Achra is Dafka when there is light.
What do you call it at the end? In the story? What do you at the end?
Like when there's great light, for example, at the Gemara Tikkun, okay, then the danger of snatch is actually at the greatest because the light is there. When there's nothing to snatch, when God's light is hidden anyhow, then there's no real Sitra Achra anyhow.
But then Rashi's story was out of the Chava.
Right.
At what point did they grab that light?
Very good question. The Rav Ashlag teaches in the Hakdama Lepanim Mirot U'Masbirot that Chava understood that the purpose of her creation, the purpose of the creation of the human being, was to correct all the reality that it would be receiving for the sake of giving, so that all the trees in the garden would reflect the aspect of giving. Okay, so what did she do? She prepared herself to receive only for the sake of giving, and then she saw that the tree of Eitz Hadat Tov Ra was actually the most beautiful tree of them all. Previously, she'd felt the death in the tree. She'd felt the separation. That's why she said she'd gone close enough to touch it, and she could feel the death within it. That's why she added Asur Lingoa, okay, which was from her own experience. So then she prepared herself, and she said, and she had Bina Yetira. She understood that this really was the purpose of man, to create, to finish the creation in the sake of receiving only for the sake of giving, okay? And so therefore she made that intention and ate from the apple only with the purest of intentions. She then gave to Adam and he ate with the same intention, only with the purest of intentions, okay? But what happened? The light was too much for them. They ate from the Gimel Rishonot, all 10 Sfirot, okay? They didn't realize not to. And once it was inside, in the Gemara, it says, Achol v'achal tishuv. I ate and I will eat again. And that second eating was in Zuhu Magdul. So the first eating was in Kedusha, but not the second time, but it was too much. It's like smashing the whole system from the inside. And the second eating, they had no defense against it. Okay? By the way, it says he writes there from the Tehillim, Hanora ba'alila asa zot. The awesome one, ba'alila, intended, la'asot zot. God intended that the whole fate of Eitz Hadat should happen. And also for the fate of the Masaya Egel, the Cheta Egel, there's also an extremely interesting Gemara that says if it weren't for the Cheta Egel, the Torah would remain just the 5 books of Moses and Yoshua. Okay, that because of the Cheta Egel, the Torah Gadal. In other words, all these things are also intended, but Meirosh, we need to understand the right way to behave. Bezrat Hashem. Okay, that's it for today. Wow. Okay, I apologize. I didn't mean to be so.
It's okay. You're trying to get your share, you know. It's okay. It's good. You need a word to say on the share. I understand that.
I don't mind it.
Hi, Judy.
It doesn't.
That's like telling me that.